Hi everyone. Let's just give everybody maybe 2 or 3 minutes and then we'll get started. Okay. Hi everyone. This is one of the sets of the four set series of product management. There will be four such sessions spanning over 4 semesters. Uh, the good news is that none of these sessions are dependent on each other. They are not sequential, so you aren't missing anything if you have not attended the last session, right? Every session is autonomous in itself, is atomic in itself, and is complete in itself, right? So today we are going to talk about um, few specific things within product management. As while product management by itself is a very vast topic, um, we shall cover several key concepts and learn a few techniques using case study, and that will continue to be the pattern of how Satcam sessions will be. Now, especially talking to product management, um, we we talk about product market fit, how fit a product is for a particular market. We talk about what's the product's growth strategy, um, you know how are we going to build and grow the product line, and how companies, once they formulate that how they build roadmaps. Once they have roadmaps, they know exactly, okay, these are the few things that I need to do as a strategy for this year, and then from this year they come to, okay, what do I need to do in the next 3 months, and so on, right? So there is a lot of planning that is involved, and there is a lot of product discovery that is involved in the process, right? When I say product discovery, it is to understand everything and anything about the customers, their usage, whether the product, what is my competition doing, and any and more data about the product before you actually go build something, right? um, so so now imagine that um, you want to the goal is that we have a few customer asks, so we know typically what our customers want to do. We want to have a common document across our company, which every person in our company can refer to and figure out what exactly does our customer want, how does it help the customers, increase the customers value, how does it inflect positively on our company's KPIs. Remember, every time we ship something to the customer, um, we want to make money also, right? We are working for a for profit company. So if we are selling a product, then we want, for each investment that we do, we want to make money also, right? So all those things need to be captured. And then how are we going to track success, right? I mean, what happens at on the launch day, what happens 30 days after the launch day, and so on. So there is this whole chain of events that happens, right? um, Between when a customer says that this is what I want, or when your product manager or some bright person in your company discovers that, hey, you know what, let's build this because this is going to be helpful for our customers in the future. From that stage, taking that particular idea or concept through various chain of events, and a series of work to actually deliver it to the market, right? That's basically the entire requirements flow. So our focus today is not just um, writing documents, but it's on the end to end process. So we are not only going to focus on writing a good requirement and how to write it, but we are going to look at the end to end flow of turning a customer feedback into a successful product launch. Okay. um, we'll use a real world example, and I'll come to that example in in a moment. But just so that we start off the right foot, our journey typically will have four stages, right? One is kind of recap of the fundamentals. Second is diagnose the case study. Second is the third is decoding secrets, right? The intent of the customer. And then finally, the rigor, right? I mean, there is like somebody said, it's like um, the smarts are only 5%, right? 95% is hard work. So there is a lot of hard work to get a product built and get it in the hands of customers, right? So we'll talk about some of that rigor. And while that hard work is happening, remember, guys and girls, that there is each minute that the company spends on their resources, on buying tools, buying technology, doing collaborations, all of that money is finally investment into the product, right? So this whole process, you will find that each time, one of the things you should not miss upon is what is the return on the investment that I'm doing, right? Am I using my time wisely? Am I using my engineering time wisely? Let's say some smart person in product management comes up with an idea that, hey, look, let's build this product out. Okay. But without testing that idea, you might have a perfect idea of a wrong product for the customers, and you tell engineering to go build it. They build the perfect wrong product, right? We don't want to be in that kind of situation. We want to build the right product for the right customer. Okay. uh, so the real world case study will be an electric scooter, and we will try to ground these concepts in practice. Now, by the end of this session, um, you should not just see features, but you should see a business solution, right? That's the goal. The technique is that of being a product detective. So having that detective sharpness, having that mindset is important. So approach, the session not with just, okay, tell me the process and I'll note down the documentation, but more from a investigation, more from a curiosity perspective into why will this product fail, why will it succeed, am I, being too attached to the product, can I look at it as a third party observer, um, you know uh, there is precision to requirements, right? So you can write hundreds of pages of requirements, but is there value to do that, or should we just tell people verbally that, hey, let's go build this, right? Is there value in that, right? So there is speed on one side, and there is precision and detail on the other side. So where is like that good mid, right? And again, like always, I will encourage everybody to ask questions. Use the chat window. I will keep a tab on the chat window to for the questions. Keep them coming so that we can tune uh, the continued presentation to what you guys are seeking. All right, so we'll start um, with this case study. Some of you may have seen it in the past, right? This is a electric scooter. This is our company. We are calling this company Kasi. I love for you guys to later on search on the internet what Kasi means, uh, and in what language, right? It's not a word from the Indian language. Okay, so this is our electric scooter. Um, the context is that the company has been quite successful. As you can see, 4 years, it has been in operation. 100 crores of revenue. We have 9,500 plus active riders in the country. It is, it on a full battery charge, it gives a range of about 127 kilometers. The top speed it can reach is about 60 kmph, and the maximum load that this scooter can carry is 150 kgs, right? Um, so so these are kind of the success stories of this scooter. Now with a 127 kilometers range, a 60 km speed, the hardware looks to be solid, right? It seems like solid moped. The challenge is now the software and the experience, right? The user experience. So as one kind of experience is, okay, so let me take a pause here. If you guys, while I'm speaking, can continue telling me what is an experience when we are thinking about a scooter like this. Let me know. Okay. Um, Now the experience could be multiple, right? One, it could be the hardware itself, how the scooter rides. One, it could be the soft experience on how the scooter gives me feedback, how the scooter is more like my buddy, right? Talking to me almost like a robot, right? And we'll increasingly see smart vehicles, right, in the future. So vehicles which talk to you, they understand your mood, they understand whether you're going too fast, too slow, they warn you and keep you safe and so on, right? So what experience is my buddy, which is my scooter, giving me? All right. The challenge is now, the challenge now is the software and the experience layer. We are in a high growth phase. So we have passed 4 years in the company, high growth, where one wrong move could alienate our core Indian user base. So the other thing which I'm revealing here is that this scooter is getting sold in India today. Okay, so we should be very careful of, when I say one wrong move, I'm talking about where are we going to put our investments, right? And we have plans to go international also. All right. So the technique is the context snapshot, right? What, when you as a product manager are thinking about requirements, this is the first thing that you should look at, which is what is my product today. Let me, if I am told that, talk about your product for 2 minutes, here is how I will talk about it, right? What I just told you. There is one thing missing though, which is what are my asks. So we'll come to that in a minute, right? Um, all right. So very simple. What is the raw signal, right? So the product manager's job is to understand what signals are coming from the market, and these signals could be, the customer, from the customer, that the customer is directly telling you something works, something doesn't work, or the customer is telling you, hey, this works, but can you do this better? This particular switch, you have it on the right side, but can you give it to me on the left side? This switch is not visible in the night, can you make it orange, in neon orange color or something like that, right? You have a dashboard, but that dashboard is black and white. Can you make it color, right? The scooter feels very heavy when, especially, I'm backing it out. Okay, I'm pulling it back in reverse. We all must have experienced it, right? You guys must have experienced. You park your scooter, and when you're pulling it in reverse, especially there is a slope, it becomes difficult, right? So which basically means that the weight is too much. Maybe that dashboard is okay, but the mobile app that I use to connect with my scooter, that app is very slow. I mean, the scooter reaches 50% of the battery life, and I'm driving around the city, and late in the night sometime I get a notification that your battery has reached 50%. What is the use? I want the notification right when the battery hits 50%. um, Other things could be, your scooter does not accept voice commands, right? It needs a bigger screen, or more connected apps. I want to play Spotify music, I want to play Amazon music on the scooter. Can you help me do that? So all these are asks coming from our current customers, who are who have already bought our product. And then there are asks coming from non customers or prospects or lost customers, that, hey, I did not buy your product because your tires wear out too fast. There is a complaint that your tires wear out too fast. I can't take that risk, I don't want to buy it. Or somebody says that, hey, I did not buy your product because there is no Google Maps integrated, right? You have your own satellite navigation system in the scooter, but that doesn't help me. I'm so used to Google that, why are you breaking my habit? Just keep me in my habit. So these are all that I mentioned is the signals coming from the customers themselves. And then there are some internal enhancements coming, right? So always a smart bunch of people within the company who are continuously thinking about, what new thing can I give my customer, even before the customer is asking, can I put something in front of my customer? So all those become kind of signals, right? They are still at a very initial conceptual kind of state. Okay. So let's say the loudest signal that we get or got in all of this, right, is we want Google Maps on the scooter dashboard, so that we don't have to keep checking our phones while we are riding. Okay. So very reasonable kind of ask from our customer. And your job is not just to build what is asked. So, oh, the customer wants Google Map, let me give them Google Map, right? That's not what we are talking about here, right? But your job is to extract the intent behind the ask. That the customer is asking for a Google Maps, right? But why? Let me ask, those why questions multiple times, right? What is the intent of the customer behind this ask, right? All that the customer needs to do is navigation, right? But let me try to find out what was the customer's motivation is in asking me for this particular feature, which is Google Maps, right? So as a PM, you are hit with the raw signal, which is a chaotic cloud, as you can see on the screen. And this cloud is all the feedbacks that we are getting. Look at the noise. So the noise could be one of incidents. Somebody says scooter is heavy. Some people say, it does not start in the monsoon season. Third group of people are saying, it's too expensive. But the loudest signal is looks like the Google Maps. So let me go deeper in it, right? That's how you start converging on a few things. You can't do everything that is there on this cloud, right? So extracting the intent from all the chaotic signals. So first is the noise to signal filtering. So there is a lot of noise. You filtered out one signal, and maybe there are two or three other signals that you filtered out. Then categorizing raw feedback, like, the scooter is heavy, or you want maps, into various different buckets, right? And based on the frequency of this ask. So you have 4 years of customer data. You know how many times this has come up, right? How many times have my customer asked me for a Google Maps feature? You know that, right? Or you do surveys, so you know that, what is the emotional intensity that the customer is wanting this also, right? um, so again, the tip is that don't go and fall for the first thing that comes your way, right? um, Build the thing that solves the most frequent outcome desired, right? So multiple things, multiple words are used. One, most frequent, right? It has to have multiple users backing it. And outcome desired, right? So the outcome is not Google Map integration in the EV, right? The outcome is the customer experience that you are delivering to the customer. And the customer experience while riding is that I can see my navigation at a fairly accurate speed while I'm riding, right? As I'm navigating, I can see a good feedback in my navigation. It doesn't matter whether it's Google Maps or something else, as long as I get to my destination accurately, safe, and without much distraction, right? Of me pulling out phone or stopping for navigation and all that, my outcome has been achieved. All right. So now the concept here is, the data driven diagnosis. Okay. Before saying yes to Google Maps, we must be curious about it, right? We must go to the next detail. So what is the customer behavior like, right? So there are three things, on this kind sort of a small mind map that I created. One category, one node is customer behavior. So who are my customers, right? Who are these 9,500 people? Are they daily commuters, or are they, Zomato delivery agents? Who is using my moped actually, right? Are they college kids? Are they younger generation? Are they older? What do they use this scooter for? And so on, right? So understanding the customer behavior, understanding the pain point segmentation, right? So kind of segmenting or categorizing various different pain points which have been conveyed to me already. Then on my operations and business side, what is my revenue? What is my average ARPU, right? Average revenue per user. Um, is it even, technically feasible to charge the battery under 2 hours? So there are multiple of those operational and business kind of um, business data that I will have. And then there is market and competitive data, right? So what is my competition doing? What are their vehicles in the market? Which one is closest to mine? How do we compare from a performance with our competition? What is their speed and range? What is our speed and range? And so on, right? So this is about kind of putting all this on some kind of a mind map, right? And in other sessions at Satcom, we do talk about much detail on how to use or build a mind map. Okay. Um, all right. So then the technique is the curiosity quadrant, right? So divide your inquiry into like four different, four, five, whatever buckets. Okay. And like we said, who are these customers could be one bucket. When I say who, it is not just a list of your 9,500 customers, but from their behavior, from their persona perspective, how would you categorize them, right? So if you were to use this data for marketing, let's say future, okay, you should know that shall I market this new feature to anybody between 18 and 30-year-old, or shall I market this to somebody between 50 and 70-year-old, right? So that is what I mean by customer behavior. Who is my customer, what is the persona, how are they going to use it, and so that it helps you focus on the right target base. Okay. The tip is always draw up personas, right? So you have a persona of a college student, you have a persona of an early employee in a company, you have a persona of um, a, a, a homemaker, you have a persona of a delivery agent, right? When I say delivery, the typical food delivery and goods delivery people who use these kind of mopeds and so on, right? So you have all these personas which you should create and figure out which persona is going to most use my product. All right. Then the next thing is, why is my customer asking me for Google Maps at all, right? It's very important to understand that part, that let me figure why is it important at all for my customer to get Google Maps, right? Um, so this step is typically called decoding of intent, or understanding the motivation of the customer. Um, so the features might change. Today you may have. So let's think about this for a minute, right? When I say understanding motivation, understanding the goals on one side of the user versus how we have enabled them to achieve their goals, right? So the goal of the user is not to use Google Map. The goal of the user is to go from point A to point B safely and precisely, right? So using navigation. So you have um, Apple Maps, you have plain and simple. You can ask people for directions as you're going, walking the street, or on your bike, and still reach your destination. Or you can have an accurate software which is actually telling you in your ear, take this turn after 200 meters, take this left turn after 100-meter, stop, and your destination is on the right side. You can have software talking to you like that and giving you precise locations, right? Your intent is not to use the software, your intent is to reach your destination safely, right? For that, what is Kasi? What is this electric vehicle providing me? That's how you should think about it. So the feature is Google Map that you're using, or maps, right? In EV that you're using. But your intent, your goal is to reach the destination. Your goal is not to to continue using maps, or to learn how to use maps, right? Your goal is to reach your destination. So keep this in mind. I've repeated it multiple times, I understand, and that was on purpose. But this is where a good product manager or a good engineer stands out in comparison with somebody average, right? An average person will think about, oh, my customer has asked me for turning my screen from black and white to color, let me start doing it, right? That's basically, you are building a feature. Colored screen is a feature in your product, and you are going and building it. But have you understood the intent behind the customer asking me? Maybe there are other ways that you can provide the customer on how to reach their goal, right? How to do that job better. Maybe the black and white screen could have a different kind of contrast, and that's good enough for the customer. You don't really need a colored screen, right? Though the customer is asking for it. So with a small change, you can still achieve the customer goal versus you jumping onto the first thing that customer said and start building it. Okay. So be very careful of this trap. Many people fall for this and end up wasting a lot of company money building the wrong thing in the product. All right. Um, okay. So let's assume that we have arrived that okay, we want Google Maps, and it is for commuters, it is for daily riders, and it is on small screens, and the customer goals that are met because of the feature is reach their destination faster, reduce distraction, and increase confidence in our vehicle. All right, now we break down, now that we know what it is, we break the value proposition down into four different things, right? So one is hands free. So when you're riding your electric vehicle, both your hands should be on the handle. You're not looking at your mobile phone, or you're not tapping any other screen. Hands free, so removing the physical danger of phone handling. Second is safety. You get to keep the eyes on the road level, right? So which means the location of my screen itself, right, on my electric vehicle. Can I give it on the right side? Because if I give it on the right side, I have to turn right, which I'm losing concentration while I'm riding my bike or my scooter. So where should be the location of the screen be so that it is built for maximum safety? What kind of cognitive load is it going to have, right? So remember, cognitive load is when you have to process information while you're riding. Okay, so there are two things which are happening at the same time. You're riding your bike, you are told that in the next 200 meters you have to turn right. So there are two parallel things which are happening, right? One is that you have to be in control of your moped, you have to be on the road, you have to ride safely. Plus the second thing which is you have started calculating in your brain is is my 200 meters done as yet, is it this turn or is it next turn, right? Now if I have a screen which is complex, okay, if I don't show you kind of almost like a countdown, right? As you're approaching that right turn, it's typically, you must have seen, right, it shows a countdown from like 100 meters, and then 70 meters, and 60 meters, 50 meters, 40 meters, and then last 10 meters it gives you a beep that you have to turn right here. Okay, so that countdown is basically helping me get some of that cognitive load off, right? I am being able to focus completely on one thing, which is drive safely or ride safely on the road. And the software is taking much of the processing load and just telling me that, hey, turn right after 10 minutes, or turn right at this point in time, right? So that's the cognitive load. The mental energy goes to um, riding rather than finding or looking at the Google map or looking at the navigation. The last one is confidence, right? So you feel confident about once you it's task accomplished. It's more like a psychological behavior. You reach your destination on time, you feel good about it, you feel confident that you're it increases your confidence level. It helps you befriend your bike, right? It almost seems like your bike helped you reach the destination on time, and you feel good about it, right? Especially when the routes are unfamiliar. Okay, so the tip here is that since we are talking about one feature, right, which has come from one motivation, the motivation, the reaching point A to point B safely, the feature that we are building is integrating Google Maps. The safety is the ultimate value. That's the tip. If the eyes stay closer to the road level, the requirement is a success. And that's our value proposition, the way we will build it once we get there, right? The next is, how does the big picture look like? So now what we have done is we have gone deeper into a concept. We have almost come to the value prop. Let's zoom out and figure, where is it sitting on the overall path. You don't want to build something which, which is only for the next 3 months or 6 months, right? You want to figure how my company is going to grow over the next 2 3 years, right? I mean, in this case it is 5 years. So what does my growth ladder look like? And I know that, this year if I integrate Google Maps in my software, it is going to give me maybe 5% increase in the revenue. Okay, that 5%, how much is it as a part of total growth target that I have for the year? Now, apart from Google Maps, what can I use Google Maps? How else can I use Google Maps so that it helps me in even in the longer term, right? Not just, finding customers, finding new customers or retaining customers for this year, but can I use a feature which I can keep building over a period of time and help achieve a longer goal? So let me give you one example, right? Um, Remember, our case study is about India today, right? It is about India. We are selling in India, but we want to sell everywhere also, right? Let's say we want to sell, as you can see in the orange step there. We want to sell in Malaysia. All right. Now, the first thing that you could think about is, will Google Maps work in Malaysia? So you are investing into your product. How is that investment going to help you in another initiative, in a collateral initiative or an international initiative? How specifically it is going to be a better stepping stone? Hey, we are one step ahead already. That, yeah, Google Maps everybody uses in Malaysia. Great, so the investment in India can be used for Malaysia as well, and so on, right? So every requirement you write must support this kind of a ladder. Think from a concept to a value prop, and now once you know that there is some value in delivering this, start thinking about, how it is going to support my growth ladder, my overall company's ladder, growth ladder for the next or coming years, right? um, and the reverse is also true. If it does not show you that, let's say, there is a feature where we want to, um, there are users from, let's say, West Bengal, and they want the language in the app to be Bangla. Hypothetically, let's take that example, right? Now we know that, several million people in India use that language, or talk that language. They may want it, but how many of those really want to read the instructions in Bangla, or are they okay with English, right? How many of those? So there is always a subset which really requires a feature. Now if we invest in that feature instead of Google Maps, and we turn our electric vehicle localized, okay, for West Bengal, it talks in Bangla language, right? It displays all the screens in Bangla language, and so on. Is it really going to help us in the 5 year plan? Once we want to go to, Southeast Asia, we want to take our vehicle to Southeast Asia, once we want to go to the Middle East, to Africa, or, to other international territory, probably not, right? Then it seems like it's a distraction. And that is why, once, keeping your eye both on the details and the big picture is important. All right, so now that we have understood, there is potential for Google Maps worldwide, and it will help our international goal also, we move to the next thing, which is, how does my roadmap look like now? Okay, so as you can see, um, I have purposefully split this roadmap into two different swim lanes, right? One swim lane is the acquisition. How am I going to acquire my customers? And it's basically very simply put, right? There is now, next, later. So now is the next 3 months. What I'm going to do is everything in now. The next 6 months, what I'm going to do is everything in next, and everything beyond 6 months I will put it in a later kind of bucket, right? So you see these vertical buckets of now, next, later, and the horizontal swim lanes, which are basically on acquisition, what am I going to do, and on customer retention, what am I going to do. So where does this Google Map fit? It fits in my customer acquisition bucket. Do I need to do it now? Yes, there is enough evidence that you need to do it now. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on my roadmap for now. Now this now, next, later, where does it come in handy? It's about budget spend, right? If, as you can see, there is integration with music apps. Do I need to invest in integration with music apps versus Google Maps? Google Maps has come out to be the winner. Okay, and this, when I say winner, it's not just somebody's whim, but there is a scientific method of prioritizing one over the other, of trying to find what is the impact of Google Maps on what I showed you earlier, right? What is the Google impact of Google Maps on my growth versus what is the impact of music apps on my growth? And we have all found out, let's say, that it is Google Maps need to be done first. That is why it is in the now bucket. Okay, so just um, the now, next, later priority matrix helps greatly. Once you have this, you are categorizing features into those that bring new customers versus there are other features which help cust- you keep the current customers happy, right? For example, a feature which is the notification feature. Now, remember, our customers have complained that your notification arrives late, right? Your fuel tank is at 25%, but you told me after I reached home, and now my fuel tank is at 10%. Okay, you should have warned me right when it was 25%, and the notification that came on my mobile app came in very late. So those are some of the things which will keep improving in the product, which keep our customers retained on the product, right? They don't move away. All right. um, the tip here, so the technique, as you can see, is the now, next, later matrix. The technique here is put something on kind of the big themes that you're following. So one big theme is customer acquisition, other is retention, so that there is clarity of what exactly is the value that your company is going to get, right? And where should you place it for that value. um, don't I mean, this keeps us away from running after just the shiny things, right? So we have done this, keeps us honest, because we know, these things will help. We have evidence that these things will help us as we move forward. All right. So then what we do is we start linking the customer's value to the company's KPI. Okay. And let's think about it for a minute, right? So you delivered um, Google Maps to customers. So there were, let's say, we have 9,500 customers. We got 500 new customers because they were waiting at the door. The moment you have Google Maps, I'm going to come and buy your EV. So we got 500 of those, right? When we get new customers, obviously it is revenue, right? So how have we increased our revenue? Um, because we uh, we integrated Google Maps in our software, maybe we arrested 300 of our customers going away to competition. So that is also, saving for us. Retention is also like, earning, right? So let's say, that's money coming into the company. The third is, the safety that we have provided for now, whatever 10,000 users that we have, they can ride their mopeds, they can ride their vehicle in a safe manner, okay, hands free manner. And that's important because that's a big value that we have provided to the customer. And keeping our customers safe, or safety of our customers, is customers value. And because our customers are safe, they feel more confident in our company, and they give us good rating, right? So higher net promoter score is what they give us. um, we fixed some of the navigation issues, and it reduced support tickets. So there were complaints from the customer that, your navigation does not work well, it is slow, it hangs, whatnot, right? And what customers do is they open customer support tickets, no different than, if your fridge stops working, you call the company and you open a ticket. So that support tickets go down, and there is higher engagement, right? The more the customers like the product, the more they want to come back to it. So when I say product, I'm talking about the mobile phone app, where the customers engage with us more, right? Because that's the point of engagement that we have, right? Now, imagine that, this vehicle is no more just a piece of, metal and engine, right? Nowadays and in the future, all this equipment is going to be smart machines. And now, beyond smart machines, right, artificially thinking machines also. So engaging our user, because you don't know, what and how many of new case use cases might come up, where you'll may be able to do a lot more just with your electric vehicle than what you're able to do today. Okay, imagine, your vehicle starts being your assistant. When I say assistant, personal assistant, right? That, hey, there is no milk at home, so your vehicle has talked to your fridge, which is a smart machine. The fridge is telling your vehicle, there is no, you are out on the road, there is no milk at home, go buy milk before you come back. It's actually more efficient, right? It's not like, you come home and, you open your fridge and then you discover there is no milk in the fridge. It is giving you that data where and when you need it actually the most, right? So this is just a very minor use case that I talked about, but there could be so many of such use cases that come up. So engaging the user on our app, collecting the right kind of behavioral data, is going to only help enhance our product, right, in the future. So that's all about, how now the customer value is linked to the goal, right, the company KPI. Now, what typically we do is not jump to a full-fledged 10-page requirement, right? So a requirement typically has multiple things, and we'll go into the details of how a requirement looks like. But what we are talking about is, do I have a buy-in from everybody, right? Can I create a one-page document and circulate with my stakeholders, okay, and get their buy-in that yes, this is the right thing that you can move forward with? Because in in an organization, you are not the only person, right, who is going to take this decision. There are multiple people who are going to be with you in these decisions, and they need to know and understand where you are investing this money, right, and what is the gain. If they agree that yes, this is required, then they need to understand, okay, in what time will this be delivered. If they understand what time, then they need to understand, what should I do for marketing it further. So you have built a feature, it does not mean that it has reached the customer. how do you take it to customer, right? There are various different marketing vehicles, advertisement, social media, so many ways that you can take the feature to the customer, right? So it prevents kind of design flaws early. Okay, building this one page document. So just remember the format of this document, which is on the right side, which is what is the context. Okay, the context is that my customers have navigation, and my customers sorry, my competitor has navigation, and my customers are using their mobile phones, okay, while riding, which creates a safety risk. That is the context. So find me a solution. Remember, the context is the motivation part. The solution is use Google Maps. Okay, so release Google Maps. We can do it in the by end of Q3, and so on. We have a timeline. What How does it help us from a customer KPI perspective? It gives me 5% increase in sales. Okay, and that's good enough for me. And over the next, like I said, over the next 3 4 years, as we go in international markets, it's only going to help us further. The cost estimate is typically, I will need 3 engineers for 3 months, and there are some other fees that I have to pay, and $2 per vehicle per month is the fee that I have to pay to Google for using their maps, and so on. Okay, so you come up with a cost structure. And then the hypothesis, the last one is the hypothesis, is that if I give this kind of safe riding, the navigation will actually increase the daily ride usage, because people will be more efficient moving from point to point. Um, so going back to our ladder, helps us with NPS, helps us with reduced support tickets, helps us with retention, and so on. Okay, so this is called as a concept document or a goal gate document. What is the customer goal, and whether we should put money here or not, right? You're using this format on the right side to either send it in email to your stakeholders and asking for their approval, or having a meeting, you ask for a raise of hands or a thumbs up, how many people say yes, how many people say no, and then you get a go no go kind of a decision on the um, initiative, even before you have invested much money, right? Because from here onwards, everything is going to be expensive. Meaning, if you start now investing in resources which are going to start integrating the feature into the product, start building it, and so on, you can't reverse that cost anyway. So you have to be very careful about where you are investing, and thus this document becomes very helpful. Then we talked about stakeholders. So you have to sell this to your stakeholders, right? Who are these guys? Who are your stakeholders? So they are basically, marketing, sales, support, engineering. You are the translator, right? So you what you need to do is, when you talk to marketing, you are talking about a smart scooter story, the language that you are using for marketing, right? And I'm not saying that you have to sell this concept in this manner, but typically if you kind of construct um, your sentences, and this is also kind of, you could say, a lesson in articulation. So if you construct sentences which causes familiarity, there is lesser resistance there. Okay, so a marketing team, if I were to talk about this feature to the marketing, I will talk about smart scooters for city commute. To the sales guy, I will talk about, this is a demo worthy feature. So sales guys love to show and tell, right? So Google Maps, great feature that they can actually show. For the support people, I will say, you will get lesser customer complaints. And for engineering, we'll say that, it's the overall feasibility, right? Feasibility language on what is the API cost, and so on and so forth. So the language that I will use while communicating with each stakeholder, and this comes with experience. I'm not saying that, uh, everybody knows it day one. This comes with experience, but the more we start using this language, the more we start empathizing with our stakeholders, the the sharper our language will get as we move forward. All right, so now assume that you have this document which you have got a go ahead from these people. Okay, now what do you do? Okay, so what you do is define a MVP. I believe everybody understands what's a minimum viable product, and some call it minimum sellable, minimum lovable, mm, you know feasible and whatnot. But I'll stick to the old term, which is MVP, which is a complete product in itself. It's not something which is, we are telling the customer that this is half baked, and the full version will come out later. There is no such thing. What you're delivering today is completely usable. It will keep growing, but it's not like it is half baked, right? So that is the definition of MVP. The thing to remember is that MVPs deliver value. Okay, so the smallest version that delivers real value is our MVP. All right, so now for our electric vehicle Kasi, the release 1 must have turn by turn arrows. Okay, now we have started defining how it will actually look, right, on the screen. The voice navigation could be later, and the offline maps could be later. Okay, so we have basically decided that voice navigation we won't do, so no voice communication with the vehicle in release 1. No um, offline maps, no traffic, right? It shows those red, orange, those traffic things. We'll do it in the later version. Right now, we will give our users turn by turn navigation and complete mobile app route setup. So you don't need to like set up the route on the vehicle. You can set it on the mobile app and say send to the vehicle. It gets sent and you start, right? So basically, you are covering the smallest version. You have started delivering value. There is value in turn by turn navigation because it's accurate. Remember, because our customers were facing this problem that things were not accurate. Now you got accurate, and that's good enough for our customers, right? So we have defined what is a minimum viable product for our release 1. Everything else we are going to move to release 2. Just a caution, okay? A lot of people try to think about MVP as a hack. Let's put something together quick and dirty. Those are the wrong definitions of MVP. MVP clearly means a product which is minimum viable. Right now you are giving minimum functionality, but it's a full product. It's well tested, it's not broken, it's not cheap, it is not quick, it is not dirty. It is something which is the first step, and we'll keep building on top of this first step. Okay, so one other way to think about is the scoping and descoping, right? So you have a full blown scope of the product. What are you going to do in release 1, the first release? That is our MVP. You can't deliver everything in the first go. So the minimum features that you are going to deliver, which give the customer value and give you the desired KPIs, that is MVP. Okay, so now we talk about behavior versus quality. Okay, and this is an important topic in requirements, right? Especially in requirements, there are two types. One, as you can see on the left side, these are functional requirements. How does my product behave on user input? So there is a user and there is my product on the other side. The user gives input to my product. Think of it like a calculator, right? Or the digital dashboard on my vehicle. As I'm giving it inputs, what happens, right? How does my system respond to the inputs coming from customer? Okay, so this is all put in the functional or the behavioral type of requirements. And then there are non-functional requirements which again, over so many years, I've found that engineers kind of forget to take into account non-functional requirements. Okay, and what are these requirements? Let's say you have a SaaS product, a calculator which is in the cloud. Okay, very simple concept. So you have a calculator, you go to a cloud environment somewhere, you open a calculator, you do your calculations, and done. You have, that's functional behavior. You have asked the calculator to do 2 multiplied by 2 and gives you 4 as the answer. It does the computation somewhere in the cloud, it renders the answer somewhere in the cloud, you see the answer, and you're happy with it. That's the user interaction, right? So that's the complete workflow, but that is behavioral or functional. Now what happens if the same thing is scaled to a million users? So the same calculator, since it's in the cloud, since it's just a URL, what if 10,000 users hit that URL at the same time? Will my calculator still function in the same manner or not? Will it crash? Will it slow down? So there is a difference between how the same functionality behaves when there is heavy load on the product, right? In this case, the case that I talked to was cloud, and the scale of 10,000 customers hitting. But in our case, in our vehicle, it could be the latency, right? Latency should be less than a second. So you click a button, less than a second, it should respond, right? That's something which we have gotten accustomed to on many of the devices that we use today. It should be readable in direct sunlight, so it functions. But remember, while even when you're holding a phone and you're out there in the sun, you have to turn the angle so that you are able to see the screen much more clearly, right? Those are the kind of qualitative or non-functional requirements. Typically, I would say that performance, scalability, um, security, or reliability are non-functional kind of requirements, right? So you need to account for them when you're designing the product or writing the requirement. All right, the next is the user story construct. So now that we know what is to be built, we know what are the non-functional requirements, what are the functional requirements, what should be the actual language in a user story, right? So when I say user story, it exactly means I'm telling the story as a user of the product. So so I'm a rider, I'm sitting on the moped, I'm looking at a navigation screen, and I'm saying my experience is, as a rider, I want to see upcoming turns so that I don't miss the exits. Okay, so that's my user story, and that user story gets turned into a feature. Okay, so so the technique is, and this is something which you will find on the internet. I've used it because it's very clear on multiple things. Who is the user of the functionality, what does the user want to do, what is the end goal that the user expects, and then we'll come to another step, which is what are the 10 things that need to pass, right? What are the tests that need to pass to say that the user story is complete? Okay, so as you can see, the flow is that rider selects a destination. So as a rider, I'm selecting the destination, the app calculates its route, the dashboard shows the arrow, and the rider reaches safely. All these things are happening in the background. Okay, the user is not telling, the user is only telling you that I punch in the data and it should start showing me good or the correct upcoming turns, right? Left, right, 100 meters, 200, whatever turns. So the technique is, as I so kind of constructs, so DAF stories, as the user, you want to do something so that this is the benefit that comes out of it. Okay, if the requirement is not testable, it's not a requirement yet, it has to be testable. Okay, so which means that the app, as this is happening, the response should be under 1 minute, 1 second, sorry, not a minute. The response should be under 1 second. So now you have put a, a quantity, a quantification to what does it mean that this user story is successful. Only if all this can happen under 1 second, then it is successful. I don't want to, sit on the road, wait for the next turn, and then go make the turn. So what becomes important is the quality assurance or the test criteria, right? um, and I have the quantification, that it should be readable in the brightest of sunlight. um, it should not take more than 5% extra battery charge, because navigation is expensive, as even on your phone, if you are using navigation, it eats battery, right? So these requirements are useless if they aren't testable. That's number one. We have a hard set threshold. The root sync is less than 2 seconds, the recalculation is less than 3 seconds, and this becomes a checklist for the QA team to say that everything works fine, it's approved, right? So the same technique. Now if you think about what we said earlier, as a rider I want to see upcoming turns so that I don't want to miss an exit. I'm going to add, so that I don't want to miss an exit, then immediately pair them with a measurement threshold, which is the root sync should be less than 2 seconds. Okay. All right. So now, we come to another very interesting aspect. What is actually the role of AI in all this, right? I mean, we talked about multiple things. We, just like a recap, right? We talked about everything from signal to specification. There is a lot of chaos. There's a lot of signals coming from the market. And we have now a technique of turning all those signals into specifications. Where can we use AI? Okay. At least today. And, I'll I'm well aware that, the changes that are happening, with all these companies, coming up with better and better language models, better and better, more efficient and precise generative AI, and so on. These things will keep rapidly changing, but there are few things which I think really help. One is the edge case identification. So definitely it is going to help you in data collection. There is actually, by the way, a method of how you ask questions to AI. Okay. And this, in plain and simple language, is called prompt engineering. But there is what is called as Socratic thinking and Socratic questioning, rather than asking for specific data. So the AI engines are smart enough to understand or get challenged with that Socratic thinking, right? And this is something which you can go practice. Instead of asking the AI, give me Malaysia data for all riders between 18 and 24 years of age who ride electric vehicles. Very specific question that you have asked, and the AI will come up with an answer, right? The Whether you are using chat gpt or whatever, you will get an answer to that very specific question. The same could be delivered in a little different format, which is what value will the riders in Malaysia find if I were to launch a electric vehicle product. Who do you think will buy my product the most, and what do you think I should have at a minimum in my product before I launch it in Malaysia? So you have asked similar data but in a different format, right? So maybe after this session, look up what is Socratic thinking and what is Socratic questioning, and you will understand how you can actually use the power of AI in gathering the data that you really want, right? Edge case identification and test criteria are two such examples. Instead of asking the Google directly, or sorry, not Google, the AI engines directly on write test cases for this feature, instead of saying that, you could ask it differently to get the AI engine thinking better and giving you more options, more solutions than earlier. Okay, so this is a great exercise for you to do at home. And um, the technique is that the AI scenario generation, use AI to brainstorm the edge cases that otherwise you may have missed. um, like for example, what happens to the map during an incoming call, or what happens when there is loss of GPS signal, those kind of things, right? You can have ask them to AI, and it will give you pretty accurate kind of answers. And then the tip or the takeaway from this slide is, let AI write the first draft of your user stories. Then you should spend time relentlessly iterating on the details, right, that matter, and throw away what doesn't matter. So don't blindly go by what AI is feeding you. First, ask smarter questions than very specific kind of queries. And second is, throw away what is not required and keep refining. Okay, now the role, right, the role of AI in requirements writing continued with that. um, I think drafting user stories is going to be quite powerful, meaning there is a little bit of grunt work which is involved in making sure that every user story has the right actors and the action and the benefit and the test scenarios and all of that. um, as a thinker, as a product manager, or as the person who is bringing these new solutions to market, you could talk more or think more about um, how should the display be, how should the route map, how should the setup be, how should my turn by turn instructions be, and so on. And let AI do most of the grunt work on producing the documentation around it. So that's definitely one other case. The other thing which one could test is the whole MVP concept, right? So you could actually use AI's help, give it a lot of data on what has been successful in the market, what are your constraints, what do you think is the minimum value that you want to provide the customers, what is the cost constraints, what are the resource constraints, how much timeline do you have. And the AI can build a plan for you. The AI is capable of delivering a plan to you that, oh, for this MVP, here is what it looks like, right? Here is what your plan looks like. All right, that's the usage of AI. So definitely, recommended to use AI whenever there is an opportunity to build efficiency or to test out edge cases, and of course, crunch a lot of data. Now, we are towards the end of our session, but some of the cautions, some of the do's and don'ts, I'll go to the don'ts first. So avoid vague terms, like my vehicle needs to be fast, or the maps need to handle this smoothly. Those are very vague terms. Smoothly and fast and all of this don't make sense. Quantify. Okay. um, the technique is to look at the what versus the how, and audit everything from that perspective. Review every requirement to ensure that you are telling the team what to achieve, what is the outcome, and not how to code it. Because finally, remember, the engineers are also going to use AI to code it. Today's topic is all about requirements flow right up to the doorstep of engineering, and our long list of user stories that we have built, those are going to be the input. Now in the future, remember, the engineering is going to feed all those user stories directly um, into a GitHub Copilot or a Cursor or a Claude code, and ask them to build those apps also. So having the level of detail, the quantification in user stories, in your requirements, is going to greatly help accelerate their progress. Okay. um, I think we everything else is very straightforward. Make sure that you have constraints included in the requirements. You have enough idea that, okay, you know what, I am building this. I'm asking you to build a Google Map integration, but this year it is going to be used only in India. Next year it is going to be used in Malaysia. Give that information in the requirements. Don't forget about NFRs, non-functional requirements. um, and always, the requirements should be tied with outcomes, and the outcomes should be tied. The outcomes are basically the customer outcomes. The customer outcomes should be tied with the business outcomes, right? So make sure that your requirement clearly calls out why you're building it, what is the benefit to the customer, and what is the benefit to your company. So these are some of the cautions. Now, um, the takeaways, I mean, some more things in your toolkit is, whenever there is a systemic requirement, you talk about the system shall do this. For example, um, if there is a backend server which is looking at all your vehicles and doing some number crunching and providing you each individual customer information on their mobile phones, right? Let's say there is a notification server. In those times, when you write the requirements for a notification server, you write it as if the system shall display this, the system shall do this, right? When you write a user story, you write, I as a rider want to do this for this benefit. Then there is what is called JTBD, right? Jobs to be done. What is the job of the rider to navigate without distraction, right? So you could write in that format. And then there is hypothesis, right? So the hypothesis goes with, what is the upside, what is the, be it 15% upside in my sales, or accident free rides, or whichever way I want to um, state it. All right. So summary, we talked about specification, we talked about functional, non-functional, and we talked about user stories. Um, we talked about, the goals, the motivation, and not just the features or the ask, right? Link every feature to business ROI. Roadmaps are prioritization tools. They are not schedules, and they can change. But you need to have precise information about what you are going to do now and next. Everything else can be later. um, Putting a lot of requirements, or as many requirements, into your user stories is only going to help the downstream better. So the more elaborate you are on your user requirements, the better engineering will be able to use them. And focus on MVP. Though it is MVP, some people call it to, version 1.0, some people call it release 1, whatever, right? You're not cutting corners. It is still a complete release, which and complete and usable release for the customer. Okay. Here is kind of the sample document, how it the feature will look like. So the context, goal, key metric, cost, and who is responsible, and so on. um, and that's it. I think, um, hope this was helpful in understanding how the requirements flow. um, you know right from the signal, the raw signal that you are getting from the market, to writing the requirements, to making sure that your requirements are complete and in depth, so that downstream can use it successfully. Now, one interesting factor is that, I had created all this, the entire presentation, in my own words, right? I mean, there were like my own shapes and placements and tables and charts and text and all those things that I used, right? And I fed it to Notebook LM and said that, turn this into some beautiful slides. And that is what you see. All these slides, by the way, are built by Notebook LM, beautified, I would say, beautified by Notebook LM. But I love, the way or how much AI is helping in beautifying these kind of presentations as well. And no different than, how AI is going to help you guys, uh, you know, spend a lot of calories in thinking about products and product requirements than spending a lot of time in mundane tasks like, formatting and spell checks and those kind of things. All right, thank you very much. And everybody, have a nice day.